I assess an athlete, and we're looking at personality traits, but I'm also looking at it more so from a holistic standpoint. I do like the Big-5. I think the Big-5 is, for me at least, the most accurate from that perspective, and it has more variance, and it allows me to maneuver things where it need be, and hybrid like some of the aspects of what I see, right? And then also the Braverman's test, just to see where, you know, their neurotransmitter dominance is, and then you can find out the correlation between the two.
That's the point. That's what we want. See, you're doing it the right way. A lot of people, they live and die by it. We talked about that earlier too. It's like you can't live and die by a result, but can they explain things? And that's why it's good to have that ability to extrapolate the data from different aspects versus just this is what it is and that's all that it is. You know.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about it. The Big-5 test.
So it's called the 5-factor model, but Big-5 is the popular term. And there's a little trick to remember them. There's two: oceans or canoe. And now, funny, they both deal with water, but let's go with oceans. So openness to experience, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So those are the big 5 factors. So this is a trait theory. So now we're talking about there's a spectrum. There's not just, are you introverted or extroverted now? It's no, where do you fall on that spectrum? Because on this side of extroversion, it'll say, if I'm closer to this side, I still can do things, but I feel more comfortable in a less dynamic, less social situation. I'm probably more to myself. I'm more engrossed in like deeper thought process versus like shallower thought processes are more social. Not saying it makes you smart or dumb, but it's more so that person who's on the introvert side probably going to be the one who's reading and learning different things, while the extroverted person gets more pleasure out of being on the scene and socializing.
That makes sense, because a lot of people learn differently, right? Everybody learns differently.
The learning style, that's another like kind of theory that kind of got misinterpreted, but we can get into that.
Well, what I was thinking was, if you have more on that extroversion side of learning, like the learning process, you like to go to seminars, you like to go to clinics, you like to go to workshops. That's how people learn there, because they can coordinate the understanding with all these different types of people, whereas like the introvert would be in the books.
You know, it's a good way to look at it.
Yeah,
exactly. So,
and that's the same thing when I'm looking with fighters and athletes, is that when I see, you know, are they introverted, extroverted, I can tell if those people will be good in groups or they're good, you know, on their own. And most of the guys, especially in the sport of MMA, because it is an individual sport, they are more introverted than most.
I've seen that firsthand working with you, is like that, but that's why it's good to understand these traits. So if we get back into the want to go over the whole thing, like obviously, so extroversion, I use that because it's probably the most well known. We hear that term all the time, but let's go from the first one. We probably talked about this one the most, surprisingly, but openness to experience. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just like more into the arts or sciences or more intellectual. That's part of it, but it's also having abstract thinking. So that means you can look at things from different perspectives. So if you're high in openness, if I bring to you a new idea, let's use the business standpoint. If you're my boss and you're high in openness, and I say, hey, sir, I think if I had a new project idea where we can do it this way, blah, 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 blah. You're like, oh yeah, I can see that. Versus someone who's low on openness to experience, they're probably like, you know what, let's keep it more concrete. They're more like more rational in their thinking. Not saying they can't be creative, but they're less likely to go with the new idea because it doesn't fit their framework. Yeah, exactly. So someone who's high on that will be more open to different ideas, abstract ideas, the arts, the music. So not saying you can't be open, because it doesn't mean you don't want to try new things. It's more so the fact that you approach them from a different perspective and be more willing to see, hey, this could be something I like.
Well, that's an interesting fact, because if you look at it, I think that person has to also be willing to let go and allow a person that comes to them with an idea to be open enough to allow them to bring that to the table. Whereas if you have a dictator or someone who is not open or is open but doesn't respect that person,
but then agreeableness will come into there. See, that's cool how they play off each other, right? So then let's not jump the gun. So so openness, that's pretty much the gist of it. So conscientiousness. So if we talk about, say, in the athletic world, most athletes are going to be high on this. This is a person who's driven. They're somewhat of a perfectionist. They want to structure and organize. It doesn't mean they're necessarily a quote unquote neat freak, but more so they want to have structure to what they do. It's not going to be like fly by the seat of your pants, what happens, happens. This person is going to be like, okay, we're going to work this many days, this many times at this time frame, and we're going to follow through. And if that goal is this, we're going to do that, regardless. That's where the perfectionism comes in.
Diligent, militant, on schedule.
Prudent, so that's prudent. So so basically, this is big in athletes because obviously you can't become a high profile athlete by skipping practice or not being structured in your goals. Like you can't just say, hey, I want to win. What does that mean? No, I want to get up at 6 a.m., do my running, then 7 a.m. come train with you, 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. doing the jiu-jitsu, whatever it is. Person who wants to succeed has to have that structure to some extent. Like
and we talked about that where you see a lot of those individuals going into the military.
Definitely.
Right? And those are those ones that like to have that structure. And if they don't have that structure, they feel like it's hard to get through the day.
Oh,
you know? They feel like they're not accomplished in a sense. Now, that can go another way. So when you're looking at it from a business standpoint, if I'm an owner, CEO, founder, mostly if you're looking at, let's say, partnerships, right? A true partnership has the ability to play off of each other, right? So if I'm a very open person, right, and I'm a visionary and I'm, creative, then I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna be the creative. Whereas the other person is more managerial, more of the operator. They're more of that conscientious.
Yep, exactly.
So then those two play a role and then they can build upon each other in a parallel fashion.
Yeah, that's why you got a CEO and a COO.
Exactly.
CEO that has to be the person that says, I see 10 years from now. While the CEO is like, hey, we got to make sure day-to-day operation, because if you don't have one or the other, COO, he's going to be the more conscious person, but they don't have the vision. But if you just got a visionary, nothing's going to get done.
Exactly.
And for me and you, we do a lot of like multiple roles, so we definitely got to be conscientious, but we still have to be open. We still got to be extroverted, which I guess is the second one we'll segue into. So obviously we're around people all day, every day, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense. Sometimes you can be alone in a room full of people because it's like you're doing a job, but at the same time, you're not necessarily like, I got to be here. I got to be hee hee ha ha. Like it's a trade-off. Like obviously you treat your clientele, and so do I, in a systematic way of, playing off of their energy. But at the same time, you might have okay, like I said, when I'm done, I'm just gonna chill, cool down, go about my day. You don't say, let me seek the next activity. Let me go jump on the correct me if I'm wrong. You're gonna want to be like, let me go jump on a Zoom call. Now, like you're probably like, yeah, I got to do a Zoom call. But in the day, that goes back to conscientiousness. You got to follow through. So that playoff. So extroversion, I like to go on this one because it gets misinterpreted so much. So the biggest thing is you got to be the life of the party, or you're just in the books doing nothing. And like I said earlier, analogy, I forget who said it. It was a great analogy though. I wish I could quote him on it, but he said that look at it as like currency, right? So if you're introverted, let's use regular American dollars. So let's say you have $100 and every extroverted moment is $5 bill.
Okay.
So that 20 times you can be extroverted. Now let's say if you're extroverted, you have $10,000. So you have more money to give out. So I love that analogy because it's like, we both can give out money, but eventually I'm like, I need to go chill in the corner for a minute.
For sure.
But you still can go out there and take lead because an extroverted person performs well in social situations.
Yeah.
Going back to sport, MMA fighter, let's use them because we work with a lot of them. They're going to be probably introverted until it is fight night. If they do well, they're able to see those lights. They're able to see the crowd, hear the screams, and say, you know what, it's time. But a person who's lower on that extroversion scale, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's time. Okay, let's do it. And they're probably going to have to get themselves more prep for it. That's the difference. Cause
you think that as an introvert, you think that is something that is an issue?
Definitely.
Yeah?
Because if you get frustrated, let's go into the cognitive aspect. If your worries and your cognitive load is being utilized for I'm nervous, there's 10,000 people looking at me, I hope my team is on my side.
But what if they're able to compartmentalize and just basically focus on the individual in front of them?
Well, that's the beauty of these personality traits, to understand that, because if you as a coach can dictate that to them, or they see themselves, then now they know how to play it. That's the whole beauty of this. Like if you understand it, you can play it a certain way. So if they do know that.
No, I definitely understand the correlation between being an extrovert, because being an extrovert, you are a showman. So you actually like the crowd, you like the lights, you like the noise, you like all that stuff. But even then, if you're extroverted, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be good as a fighter.
Oh no, definitely not.
Or any athlete, right?
Yeah,
under the lights. I do, but I also see it on the other side. It's like just because they're introverted doesn't necessarily mean that all the lights and all that stuff.
Definitely not.
It really is a different factor. But I do see some of the relevancy when it comes down to it, and how both sides have to prepare accordingly.